We've talked about the gunner's adaptability, we've experienced the scout's breakneck speed, and we've dissected the driller's affinity for destructive control. And now we come full circle to the class that was my own beginning in Deep Rock Galactic, the Engineer. Just like his namesake, he's the class centered around all things technical. He brings a lot of conventional and high-tech weaponry, from classic shotguns and grenade launchers to lasers, trip mines, holograms, smart guns, and robotic drones. Then there's the turrets, arguably the #1 reason why most people pick an Engineer class in general, and he certainly doesn't disappoint in that area. They are one of the best defensive tools exclusive to the Engineer, and from a design perspective, they look and sound amazing. And finally, there's the platform gun, the only traversal tool that creates structures for mobility, and is frankly one of the most creative tools I've ever seen in a game of this genre. But what's our core theme? Like every class up till now, what is the foundational idea behind the Engineer? You all know the drill at this point. We look at 3 aspects that define an Engineer and ultimately summarize their core theme. So I'll cut to the chase. To understand the Engineer, we need to look at them from 3 roles: as a defender, an architect, and a strategist. If we can understand these 3 roles, we can understand how the Engineer encapsulates the idea of... You know what? I'll save that till the end. Now right off the bat, the Engineer prefers to hunker down and let the action come to them. They have the most fascinating variety of weapons that allows them to fulfill the role of defender. He brings a little bit of everything, from conventional weapons like shotguns, grenade launchers, and mines, to high-tech experimental weaponry ranging from smart rifles, plasma cutters, and robotic drones. The Engineer's primaries offer a great deal of coverage to most combat scenarios. The shotgun is a close to mid-range weapon that offers solid damage and is a staple for its ease of use. Then we have options like the stubby SMG, which trades raw damage for its ability to electrocute enemies, and the low-key smart rifle, with its auto-targeting system that fires homing rounds with pinpoint accuracy. Now when you look at his secondaries, however, you'll notice they break normal convention. While other classes have sidearms and light weaponry as backups, Engineer secondaries are classified as heavy weapons. Such options include the grenade launcher, with its ability to clear hordes, the breach cutter capable of cleaving through enemies with its plasma blades, and the shard diffractor with its long-range laser beam capable of igniting enemies and dealing increased damage over time. They offer tremendous firepower and are capable of dealing with any enemy, be they grunt or oppressor. These weapons are so powerful that the Engineer may as well be carrying 2 primaries. Then there are the grenades, which fill in whatever niche your loadout is missing, be it crowd control, more firepower, or extra defense. Then there's the cornerstone of his entire arsenal, the sentry turrets, which act as the Engineer's primary defense system. They are perfectly accurate, have considerable range, and are a consistent source of damage to help thin out any swarm. They also can't be damaged by bugs, with their only upkeep being setup time and refilling ammunition. You can also mod your sentries for either a dual turret configuration or a singular, more powerful sentry. But the most important benefit sentries provide is that they allow the Engineer to deal with enemies on multiple fronts. A well-deployed sentry can oversee a large amount of terrain to mitigate some of the pressure from enemies, whether it's locking down an area, covering your blind spots, or picking off stragglers. Combining their entire arsenal together allows the Engineer to create loadouts with immense firepower and coverage over various types of enemies, making the Engineer's weapons highly adaptable, on par with the gunner's loadouts if not more. So the Engineer clearly has enough weaponry to defend themselves and their teammates. But you'll need more than overwhelming force to defend against the hordes of Hoxies. You'll need to tap into your building skills to truly understand the meaning of defense. In a game like Deep Rock Galactic, having the role of architect sounds like it doesn't belong. I thought the same thing, until I took a closer look at the platform gun. Out of all the traversal tools in this game, the platform gun has to be the most fascinating, due to it being the only tool that creates structures. These platforms can be placed almost anywhere, and you can climb, walk, and even build on top of them. Beginner strategies typically involve putting platforms along walls to get to elevated locations. The most common class team-up involves engineers helping scouts grab elevated minerals by putting platforms below them, allowing scouts to harvest these materials with ease. Another important feature of the platforms is that they can also mitigate fall damage, the most common form of fatality on Hoxies. This makes it easier for you and your teammates to survive lethal falls. Depending on the height, this can also be used as a travel tactic, allowing you to cover great distances vertically without compromising your health. Now that we know the basics, we can look at the platform gun's advanced strategies that put its strengths on full display. When we look at platforms outside their basic use, we no longer see them as just platforms, but actual construction material. Just like Lego bricks, you are only limited by your imagination as to what you can construct. You can build anything from bridges, towers, stairways, flooring, rooftops, bunkers, you name it. The flexibility of platforms as a building material also provides room for experimenting and adapting your structures with different configurations for various scenarios you might encounter.
Hey look, I made a bridge. It only took me 10 seconds. 11 hours.
Along with advanced structures, platforms can be used to seal off and repair broken terrain. Openings in walls and ceilings can allow bug swarms to outflank and overwhelm your position if you are not careful. Platforms, however, can seal off these routes, forcing bugs to spawn and travel further away from your location, lowering the risk of being overrun. The platform's utility as a repair tool is a topic I don't see discussed often. Depending on the biome, enemy composition, and equipment the team brings can cause a lot of wear and tear to the terrain, to the point where floors start to look like Swiss cheese. This greatly affects your ability to travel and can easily disrupt your momentum in the worst of situations. As an engineer, your platforms can patch these holes in the ground, granting you and your team smoother traversal. Whether it's potholes, gaps, or hazardous terrain, your platforms can be relied upon to provide safer footing. The final advanced tactic worth discussing about the platform gun is the bug repellent upgrade. Now there are a lot of nitty-gritty details that come with this mechanic. Too much to squeeze into this one video. So if you want to actually learn about this mechanic in depth, I've linked a video in the description that gives a full overview of how this effect works. But the gist of the repellent upgrade is that it gives an AoE around platforms that forces bugs to go around them when possible. This allows the engineer to influence where bugs can and can't go, limiting their pathing. This makes it all the more easier for you and your team to set up defensible choke points, which funnel all your enemies into one location, and subsequently grind them all up with ease. This mechanic is a tool that should not be underestimated, as mastering it allows you to influence the battlefield like never before, and is a boon to your defensive capabilities as an engineer. As you can see, there is no lack of variety in how one can apply platforms to multiple situations. Just like the engineer's weaponry, they are an incredibly versatile utility that is invaluable in the engineer's loadout. Now, based on what we discussed so far, the engineer sounds like an absolute powerhouse. They have devastating weaponry, they can lock down areas with their turrets, and can construct a myriad of defensive structures. In other words, this class has a lot going for it, and it sounds like they have no weaknesses at all. That looks to be the case until we consider the following. 1. Engineers have the weakest default movement in comparison to their colleagues. While platforms offer immense utility and protection, they lack velocity and/or momentum that other traversal tools bring to the table. Now, technically speaking, engineers have decent movement, but like everything else in their kit, they have to build toward this with their platforms. Which leads me to our second point, and that is, almost all of the engineers' mechanics and playstyles require some degree of setup due to how time-consuming they can be. In high-intensity scenarios, engineers can struggle if they haven't built sentries, deployed platforms, or scoped out a defensible spot, as it is much harder to do all these things when you are constantly under threat. There's also a third point I didn't realize until it was pointed out to me. Another weakness of the engineer is their ammo economy. Their weapons can burst down a lot of enemies, but they expend a lot more ammo than some of their colleagues, which can lead to them having low ammo reserves if they aren't managing it effectively. Plus, it's worth noting that the engineer technically has 2 ammo reserves that must be accounted for, their main weapons and the sentry ammo, which can burn through bullets if left unattended. To counter these weaknesses, the engineer has to take on the role of a strategist. Thinking on one's feet is a skill that is applicable to all classes, but for engineers it's practically mandatory. For comparison, if gunner and driller are winging it, and scouts are thinking 2 steps ahead, then the engineer has to be thinking 5 steps ahead. Pre-planning and time management is a skill every engineer needs to learn to maximize the effectiveness of their equipment. The second you enter a cave, you should be taking everything into account. The layout, escape routes, choke points, hazards, construction zones, anything that can benefit or hinder yourself. Here is an example of how much info you will be processing. Okay, this is more of a humorous post that I can only assume was from the DRG Reddit, but there is a nugget of truth to this image. As an engineer, you will be processing a lot of information, something that could be overwhelming for beginners, but with enough time and practice you can sharpen these analytical skills to help you organize on the fly. This mental checklist allows you to prioritize your objectives to allow for a smoother workflow. Your order of operations will vary depending on your environment, mission, and the type of equipment you bring. If you start in a cave with loads more enemies than usual, you'll probably want to prioritize setting up defenses and thinning out enemies before worrying about construction. In contrast, starting in a cave with large chasms and steep drops will have you prioritize platform construction versus defense. And then there's your equipment, which can add another layer of complexity to your strategies. Certain weapons and overclocks can reduce or increase the amount of planning you have to take into consideration. For example, a loadout bringing shotgun plus stunner, plasma cutter with roll control, shredder swarm grenades, and a single turret is a lot less complex than a loadout focusing on the SMG with microconductor, the shard diffractor with plascrete catalyst, proximity mines, and double turrets. One has significantly more prep time to take into consideration. This is ultimately why I consider the engineer not just an advanced class, but a snowball class. They are at their weakest at the start of a mission, but once they get their strategies and mechanics rolling, they become cascading powerhouses that are very difficult to hinder. So what does this make the engineer at the end of the day? What is their specialty? Well, their specialty is ultimately safety. Everything they do is all in the pursuit of securing their environment. He even says it outright.
It's all about securing the caves, you know.
Their turrets and vast array of weaponry allows them to keep enemy numbers low, giving their teammates more opportunities to explore the caves in relative safety. Their platforms provide extra defense against enemies and also act as a safety net against cave hazards and the all too common misstep. Their propensity for pre-planning and foresight keeps them on task in maintaining the safety of their work environment and balancing the usage of their tools. But for all the engineer's strengths, their limited mobility, prep time, and ammo management keeps them in check. And there is only so much you can do to mitigate these weaknesses yourself, which is why a smart engineer knows that their greatest safety net is their teammates. Scouts keep the caves lit, which allows you to more accurately survey the landscape for places of interest, defensible zones, and possible platform locations. In prolonged combat, engineers run the risk of burning through their ammo too quickly if they have to manage a horde by themselves. A gunner and driller, however, mitigate this pressure as they provide valuable sustained damage and crowd control, especially for larger hordes. They also can provide a buffer between you and the swarms, whether it's the gunner dropping a shield to provide some breathing room, or the driller opening up areas in the walls that allows you to create bunker defenses with your turrets and platforms. This creates a sort of feedback loop of safety. Sticking close to your team allows you to set up all your gear and strategies, which in turn allows your teammates to do their jobs more effectively and safely, which makes the environment less dangerous for you to work in. You get the picture at this point, it all comes back into a loop. This drastically increases the survivability of the entire team, and as long as this feedback loop continues, your team will make it out in one piece. The engineer is ultimately a class for those who like a more defensive and strategic playstyle, but also don't mind a bit of complexity and playing the long game. It's a class with arguably the most moving parts in terms of mechanics you have to constantly juggle and monitor. A parallel I realize that makes it easier to describe all this is that playing the engineer is akin to setting up dominoes. You meticulously plan out your structures, you cover all your routes, you set up defensive choke points, you lay out everything from your main strategies and backup plans. And when everything is set and done and the action begins, all those pieces, all that prep work starts to fall in place, all according to design. And there is nothing more satisfying for an engineer than seeing plans come together before your eyes.
I have a goddamn plan!
So whether you're a veteran engineer who multitasks like crazy, or a first timer getting used to their new toolbox, always remember to defend, build, and assist with any task that needs doing. Just never forget to not only play it safe, but play it smart. And that's it. We've given a thorough analysis to all 4 classes within Deep Rock Galactic. It's been a long road, but we made it to the end. I hope these analyses and deep dives were enjoyable to watch, and perhaps gave a different perspective on how you see a particular class in-game. Many thanks to everyone who has been following this series from beginning to end. I hope you all will continue to stick around for future projects, be it DRG or otherwise. Until then, I will catch you folks later. And also, rock and stone.